There's a widespread metaphor that language is a vehicle or a tool for expressing one's thoughts. Kenneth Burke's piece, Terministic Screens, challenges this metaphor by asking us to see language's operation even in our perceptions of the world. So, language has a broader expanse, a broader realm of power than just at the moments of actual speech. But, of course, attending to that and to the effects that such language will have on people's observations is also something that can help inform us of how to construct effective speeches, where to look for material when we're speaking, when we're trying to persuade, when we're trying to adjust attitudes, when we're trying to illuminate some feature of experience. Burke says that every terminology selects, reflects, and deflects some aspect of experienced reality. So what does that mean? He gives some examples in the article, but maybe we could use some that are more familiar for us. So let's first thinking about the fact that a terminology might select for some aspect of reality. Here, let's use a sports analogy. In basketball or baseball, hockey, lots of sports record statistics for certain performances, certain feats, certain features of the game, either individually or for a team, of course. But which things are we looking at, and why are those selected rather than others? So, for instance, in basketball, the assist, that is, the pass made right before someone else on the team gets a basket, is recorded. And there's lots of things that people have said the assist shows. Maybe it shows leadership, that someone who's able to distribute the ball well, someone who has a good sense of the court, things like that. But in looking at the assist, we are now selecting to look at the pass that happens before the shot. If we didn't look at the assist, we might not see that at all. We might not see that the person who's good at passing the ball just before a shot is someone that has leadership. We might not even register that as a reality. In the same way, maybe there are statistics yet to be made about certain things that are happening in a basketball game. For instance, what about the pass that happens to before the basket? Or what about the successful inbounds play? Things like that are not recorded, therefore don't accumulate the same kind of meanings as things that are socially selected for us to look at. Now, that might not necessarily mean that it's arbitrary. There might be good reasons to select for that part of reality. But nevertheless, having the terminology, in this case, individual player stats in basketball, selects for us to look at certain features of the game and performance. What does it mean when we say a terminology deflects from certain features of reality? Here we might think about some ways that people evaluate war. Often we hear in certain parts of the press and from certain officials that war is to be calculated in terms of deaths and casualties or injuries. That framework makes us select and look for an evaluation of war within that. We begin to compare deaths. Did this war kill more people than that war? Does that make it a better war? However, in looking only at that framework, only at those numbers, it deflects from a lot of other realities of war that would maybe give us a different evaluation. For instance, the environmental devastation for war is not easily put into one of those categories. The long-term effects of, let's say, birth defects from Agent Orange and other chemicals used by the United States in Vietnam continue on to this day, long after the war is over. So those might not be counted in the injuries from the war. And you might have economic devastation, depression, separation of families, all of these kinds of things that are not measured in those statistics. So when we are deflecting from certain parts of reality, it is a feature of what we are selecting for. Those things that we are looking closely at because of the terminology are also part of what we are not looking at. And that is the relationship between selecting reality and deflecting reality. You might say, okay, a terminology might make me focus on something more in that it selects for reality, and maybe it doesn't point out everything that's potentially relevant, so it deflects. But the fact that it reflects reality is really what's important to me. How is that different from me expressing my thoughts or expressing something that is real? Reflections are always partial, inverse, and can be highly distorted. So even when we say that a terminology reflects something in reality, it doesn't mean that it is that thing. So, for instance, we talked in another video about defining a situation. We talked about how you might see from one perspective a situation as self-defense, and in another perspective, see it as assault. Those are two different reflections of the same reality. They come from different perspectives. And of course, in the metaphor, mirrors placed in different places would give us different images of the same reality that would show us different things. So even in that part of a terminology that we think is reflecting a reality, we should remember that that doesn't mean that it's free from distortion. That doesn't mean that it's complete. And it doesn't necessarily even mean that it is true by the standards of the discourse that we are operating in.